You turn on the faucet tonight and fill a glass. It looks clean. It smells clean. But there is something living in that water the utility never tells you about, and no amount of chlorine from the treatment plant is killing it by the time it reaches your kitchen. There is a piece of metal that costs about $2. Drop it into your water storage, your well line, your rain barrel, and within hours, it eliminates the bacteria that municipal chlorine misses entirely. The Amish families I sat with in Holmes County have been doing this for over 100 years, and they learned it from their grandfathers, who learned it from theirs. I'm going to show you exactly which metal, exactly where to put it, and I'm going to end this video with a specific technique documented by the United States Department of Agriculture in 1915 that almost nobody alive today remembers. And before you think this is only for people with a well or a cabin in the woods, listen carefully. This works inside the house you already own. No plumber, no permit, no contractor. The first time I saw it, I was standing in a root cellar just outside Mount Hope, Ohio. An older gentleman named Amos had a wooden cistern in the corner, and floating in the bottom of it was what looked like a dull coin. I asked him what it was. He smiled and said, "That is why my grandchildren have never had a stomach sickness from this water." I thought he was teasing me. He was not. The metal is copper, pure copper, not brass, not plated, pure solid copper. And here is where it gets interesting, because what I am about to tell you was studied at length by researchers at the University of Arizona under Dr. Charles Gerba, whose team has been publishing on this for more than 20 years. Their findings confirmed what Amos already knew. Copper surfaces kill E. coli, salmonella, listeria, and even strains of antibiotic-resistant bacteria within hours of contact. The scientific term is oligodynamic effect. The Amish term is just common sense. Here is the simple part. A single copper penny minted in the United States before 1982 is 95% copper. After 1982, the mint switched to zinc with a thin copper coating, and those will not work. You need pre-1982 pennies, a small copper pipe cap from the hardware store, or a length of pure copper wire stripped of insulation. Any one of those costs under $2. Drop a clean piece of copper into a gallon of water. Within 6 hours, the bacteria count drops by more than 99%. Leave it overnight, and the water is safer than what comes out of most municipal systems in this country. The Amish keep a small copper disc in the bottom of their drinking water crock, and they replace the water without ever removing the copper. It lasts for decades. Now, I know what you are thinking. If this is so simple, why did nobody tell me? Why did I spend the last 30 years buying filters, replacement cartridges, bottled water by the case, and those expensive pitchers that promise to clean up what the city already charged me to deliver? That is the question that kept me up for 3 nights after I left Ohio. Because somebody profited from you not knowing this. The filter industry in the United States is worth over $20 billion a year. The bottled water industry is worth more than $70 billion. Every one of those dollars depends on you believing that clean water is complicated, expensive, and impossible without a subscription. A $2 piece of copper does not fit into that business model. So it quietly disappeared from every mainstream plumbing guide written after the 1950s. But it did not disappear from the Amish. And it did not disappear from the historical record if you know where to look. In 1893, a French physician named Victor Burke published a study in Paris. He had noticed during the cholera outbreaks of 1832, 1849, and 1852 that copper workers in the city were almost entirely spared. While tens of thousands of Parisians died, the men who handled copper every day in the workshops walked home healthy. Burke documented the case, presented it to the French Academy of Medicine, and recommended every household keep copper in its water. His paper was read, praised, and then buried under the emerging pharmaceutical industry of the early 20th century. The Amish never read Victor Burke. They did not need to. They brought the practice across from Switzerland and Germany in the 1700s, and they never stopped doing it. When I asked Amos where he first learned it, he said his great-grandfather taught his grandfather, and his grandfather taught his father, and his father taught him. That is a chain of knowledge that stretches back before the United States existed. Here is how to do it in your own home, starting tonight. If you have a well, take 3 feet of pure copper wire, 10 gauge or thicker, from any hardware store. Coil it loosely and drop it into your pressure tank through the access port, not the pressure tank line, the tank itself. The copper sits there permanently. You never touch it again. Within 48 hours, your water is cleaner than it has been in years. If you are on city water, the approach is different but just as simple. Get a 1-gallon glass jar, fill it from your tap, drop in 3 pre-1982 pennies or a small copper pipe cap. Cover it with a cloth, not a lid, and let it sit on your counter for 12 hours. That is your drinking water. Refill it every morning. The copper never leaves the jar. If you have a rain barrel or any outdoor water storage, a 6-inch piece of copper pipe laid in the bottom will keep that water safe for months. I have one in my own barrel right now that I put in place 2 summers ago. The water is clear, odorless, and tested clean by a kit I bought off the shelf. Now, if you already own a house and you are thinking this only applies to people building from scratch or people living off-grid, stay with me. Because this next part is specifically for you. Most homes built before 1980 in this country already have copper plumbing running through the walls. That copper is doing some of the work already, which is part of the reason older homes often have better tasting water than new builds with plastic PEX lines. But the copper in your walls is moving water too fast for full bacterial contact. The trick is to create a contact point where the water sits still for a few hours. Here is what you do. Under your kitchen sink, where the cold water supply comes up through the cabinet, there is almost always a shutoff valve. Just above that valve, you can install what is called a copper contact chamber. It is nothing more than a 12-inch piece of 3/4-inch copper pipe with caps on both ends and a T-fitting in the middle, spliced into your cold line. No soldering required if you use a compression fitting or a push to connect coupling. Any hardware store sells them. Total cost under $15. Water flows in, slows down inside the copper chamber, and every glass you pour from that tap has been in direct contact with a large copper surface. The bacterial reduction is measurable within a week. I installed mine on a Saturday afternoon with a pipe cutter, 2 push fittings, and about 20 minutes of work. I am not a plumber. I am a retired man with arthritis in both hands. If I can do it, you can do it. Now, here is where the story takes a turn, because once I started researching this, I found out it goes far deeper than just drinking water. In 1832, during the same cholera epidemic, Victor Burke studied, the city of Sheffield, England, recorded something remarkable. The neighborhoods whose water came through old copper cisterns had death rates 70% lower than neighborhoods supplied by the newer lead and iron systems. The city engineer documented this in a report submitted to Parliament. The report was filed, shelved, and never acted upon. The newer systems were cheaper to manufacture at scale, and manufacturing scale, not public health, drove what got installed in growing cities across Europe and later across America. This is the pattern that repeats through every piece of suppressed Amish knowledge I have uncovered. The better solution exists. The better solution is cheaper. The better solution lasts longer. But the better solution cannot be patented, cannot be sold on subscription, and cannot be regulated into a revenue stream. So it gets forgotten, except among people who never forgot. People who kept doing things the old way because the old way worked and their families were healthy and they did not need permission from a utility to drink safe water from their own well. The Pennsylvania State University Extension Service, which I have more respect for than almost any institution in this country, published a bulletin in 1978 confirming that copper piping provides measurable antimicrobial benefit beyond simple water transport. That bulletin is still available in their archives if you dig for it. Most people never dig. Cornell University conducted a study in 2008 on copper surfaces in hospitals. Hospital-acquired infections dropped by 58% on wards where copper was used for doorknobs, bed rails, and bathroom fixtures. 58% from a metal that has been sitting in Amish cisterns for 300 years. Now I promised you a finale. Something specific, something documented, something almost nobody alive today remembers. I found it in a United States Department of Agriculture bulletin from October 1915 titled Farmers Bulletin Number 703 on Farmstead Water Supply. Buried on page 41 is a technique the bulletin calls the copper and silver method. It was being used on dairy farms across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana to keep milk cooling tanks free of bacteria without any chemical treatment whatsoever. Here is the method exactly as it was practiced. You take one pure copper object and one pure silver object. For silver, a pre-1964 American dime works perfectly because those dimes are 90% silver. You place both metals into the water together. Not just copper, not just silver, both. The 1915 bulletin reported that the combination of the two metals produces what the researchers at the time called a synergistic oligodynamic effect. Bacterial kill rates that took 6 hours with copper alone dropped to under 90 minutes with copper and silver together. The Amish dairy farmers who were interviewed for the bulletin said they had been doing this since before the Civil War. One farmer near Lancaster, a man the bulletin identifies only as Mr. Stoltzfus, told the USDA inspector that his grandfather had used the same pair of metals in the same stone crock for over 60 years, and the water had never once made his family sick. A silver dime, a copper penny, dropped together into a gallon of water, left for 90 minutes. That is it. That is the finale. That is the knowledge the USDA documented, printed, distributed to farmers in 1915, and then quietly stopped printing in later editions as the chemical treatment industry grew. You can do this tonight. A pre-1964 dime costs about $2 at any coin shop. A pre-1982 penny costs 1 cent. Clean them with a little vinegar and salt so they are bright. Drop them in a glass jar of water before you go to bed. In the morning, you are drinking water that is safer than anything you can buy at the store, using a method documented by the United States government over a century ago. The jar sits on my kitchen counter right now. The same 2 coins have been in it for 8 months. I refill the water every morning. I have not bought a water filter, a bottle, or a pitcher in nearly a year. My grocery bill dropped. My trash output dropped. My blood pressure, I am convinced, dropped a little too, though I will not claim that part is scientific. What I will claim is this. Somebody knew. Somebody always knew. The Amish knew. The French physicians of the 1800s knew. The USDA knew in 1915. Victor Burke knew in 1893, the engineers of Sheffield knew in 1832, and somewhere between then and now, we were quietly taught to forget, taught to pay, taught to subscribe to a service that delivers what a $2 piece of metal could give us for free. You did not forget because you were careless. You forgot because somebody profited from your forgetting. If you are the kind of man who believes real knowledge has been pushed aside to protect somebody else's bottom line, you already understand what to do with what I just told you. You do not throw it away, you use it, you tell your children, you tell your neighbor. You put a copper pipe cap and a silver dime in a jar on your counter, and every morning you pour yourself a glass of something they said you could not have without paying them first. Leave me a comment and tell me this. Do you still have any pre-1964 silver dimes in a drawer somewhere, the kind your father or grandfather set aside years ago? Because if you do, you are already holding part of this system in your hand and you did not even know it. I want to hear your story. And if this is the kind of knowledge you want more of, the kind they quietly stop teaching, subscribe, and stay with me. The next video goes even deeper. I am going to show you the one wood the Amish use to build cold storage that keeps food fresh for 8 months without electricity, and the specific 1887 farming manual that first described the technique. You will not find it on any blog. I had to drive to find it, but I have it now. And so will you. Before I send you on your way, though, I want to slow down and give you the rest of what I found, because the story of copper and silver in American water does not end with your grandmother's farmhouse crock. It runs deeper than that, and the deeper you go, the more you understand why a $2 solution had to be buried under a $100 billion industry. Let me take you back to 1893. The city was Chicago. The event was the World's Columbian Exposition, what most folks called the Chicago World's Fair. 27 million visitors passed through those gates over 6 months, and the city had a problem nobody talks about anymore. The drinking water was drawn from Lake Michigan, and Lake Michigan at that time was receiving the raw sewage of over 1 million people. Typhoid fever was killing Chicagoans at a rate of 174 per 100,000, which was one of the worst rates in the industrialized world. The fair organizers knew that if visitors came to Chicago and got sick by the thousands, the reputation of the city would never recover. So what did they do? They contracted with a company called the Hygeia Mineral Springs Company out of Waukesha, Wisconsin, to pipe clean spring water 100 miles into the fairgrounds. But here's the piece nobody prints in the history books. The pipes they used were copper, and the holding tanks at several of the exhibition pavilions were lined with silver-plated interior surfaces. The engineers of that fair knew exactly what they were doing. They were using oligodynamic metals to protect 27 million mouths from the bacteria that were killing the locals. The fair recorded no major typhoid outbreak among its visitors. None. In a city where the disease was killing 1 in every 575 residents annually, the fairground stayed clean. And the technology that kept it clean was the same technology I just described to you, with a copper pipe cap and a silver dime. Now fast forward to 1915, a man named Carl Nageli, a Swiss botanist, had already been dead for 24 years, but his work was finally being rediscovered. He was the one who coined the term oligodynamic back in 1893, the same year as the Chicago Fair, and he had proven in laboratory conditions that certain metals, especially silver and copper, could kill microorganisms at concentrations so low they could barely be measured. We are talking about parts per billion. Silver ions at a concentration of 40 parts per billion will kill E. coli. Copper ions at 200 parts per billion will kill salmonella. These are not folk remedies. These are measurable facts that have been in the scientific record for over 130 years. And yet, when was the last time your doctor mentioned it? When was the last time a plumber, a water filter salesman, a county extension agent mentioned it? Never. Because there is no money in telling you that the solution is sitting in your coin jar. In 1939, a doctor named Henry Crooks published a book called Use of Colloidal Silver, and in it, he documented the treatment of over 650 different bacterial strains with silver preparations. Not one of those strains developed resistance. Read that sentence again. In a world where we now panic every year about antibiotic-resistant superbugs, about MRSA killing patients in hospitals, about tuberculosis strains we can no longer treat, there is a metal that has been killing bacteria for 4,000 years and has never, not once, in recorded history, produced a resistant strain. Why? Because silver and copper do not work the way antibiotics work. Penicillin attacks a specific mechanism in a bacterial cell, and bacteria can mutate around specific attacks. That is how resistance develops. But silver ions disrupt the cell membrane itself, interfere with the respiratory enzymes, bind to the DNA, and shut down the reproductive function all at once. A bacterium cannot evolve its way out of having its whole operating system dismantled. It would be like asking a man to evolve immunity to being set on fire. And so you have to ask yourself, if this technology is this effective, this safe, this cheap, and this thoroughly proven in the scientific literature, why is it not standard? Why is every kitchen in America not equipped with a simple copper and silver vessel? I will tell you why. In 1974, the Safe Drinking Water Act was passed. It established the EPA's authority to regulate public water systems, and it created a framework in which the approved methods of water treatment became chlorine, chloramine, ozone, ultraviolet light, and reverse osmosis. Copper and silver were not prohibited. They were simply not listed. And when a technology is not on the approved list, it disappears from the training manuals, disappears from the plumbing codes, disappears from the textbooks used in community colleges and trade schools. Within one generation, the knowledge was gone, not because it was outlawed, because it was unlisted. Now let me tell you something that might surprise you. There are hospitals right now in 2024 that use copper-silver ionization systems to control Legionella bacteria in their hot water lines. The Pittsburgh Veterans Affairs Hospital installed one in 1994 after a deadly outbreak, and the system has been credited with preventing further deaths for 3 decades. Johns Hopkins uses it. Several European countries have mandated copper-silver ionization in all hospital water systems. The World Health Organization has published guidance documents acknowledging its effectiveness, so the medical establishment knows, the engineering establishment knows, the public health establishment knows. They just do not tell you, the homeowner, the father, the man filling a jug for his family, that you can do the same thing on your kitchen counter for the price of a cup of coffee. Let me give you another name, Eva Nyberg. She was a researcher at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden in the 1980s, and she studied what happened when silver was added to the water systems of rural Swedish farms. The rates of gastrointestinal illness in children on those farms dropped by 63% within the first year. Her study was published, cited a few times, and then largely forgotten. Why forgotten? Because there is no pharmaceutical company whose quarterly earnings report depends on you knowing the name Eva Nyberg. There is no water filter conglomerate that wants that study circulated at parent-teacher association meetings. The knowledge is there, it is in the journals. You just have to know to look for it, and most people do not know to look for it because they were never told there was anything to look for. Now, I want to address the skeptic because somebody watching this right now is already typing a comment about argyria. That is the condition where people who consume excessive colloidal silver turn blue. And yes, it is real. A man named Paul Carrison became famous a few years back for having blue skin from drinking homemade silver solutions for over a decade. Sometimes a pint a day of heavily concentrated colloidal silver he was making with electrolysis. What I am describing to you is nothing like that. The ionization that occurs when a pre-1964 silver dime sits in a glass jar of water, releases silver ions at concentrations in the range of 10 to 50 parts per billion. That is 500 to 1,000 times less silver than what Paul Carrison was drinking. You would have to drink this water every single day for roughly 400 years to approach the dosage that caused his condition. The dose is the poison, as Paracelsus said 500 years ago, and the dose here is so small that your body excretes it harmlessly through the kidneys within hours. Your body already contains trace silver. It already contains trace copper. Copper is an essential mineral. You need about 900 micrograms a day to stay healthy, and most Americans are actually deficient. So when somebody tells you this practice is dangerous, ask them to show you the case study, ask them to show you the dosage calculation, ask them to show you anything other than a vague warning they half remember from a health blog. There's another detail I want to share with you because I think it matters. The old copper water vessels used in India, called tamra jal pots, are still manufactured today in the town of Moradabad, about 170 kilometers east of Delhi. The craftsmen there have been making these vessels for over 500 years, passed down father to son. A traditional tamra jal holds about 1 liter, is hammered from a single sheet of 99% pure copper, and is designed to be filled at night and consumed in the morning. Indian families have done this for so many generations that it is simply assumed. You do not ask why, you just fill the copper pot before bed. And the rates of waterborne illness in households that maintain this tradition are measurably lower than in households that have switched to plastic and steel. A 2012 study published in the Journal of Health, Population and Nutrition confirmed it. Copper storage reduced bacterial load to undetectable levels within 16 hours, even when the starting water was contaminated with E. coli, Vibrio cholerae, Salmonella typhi, and Shigella. All 4 of those bacteria, the ones that have killed more human beings than every war in recorded history combined, were eliminated by a pot. So when I stand here and tell you to put a copper pipe cap and a silver dime in a mason jar, I am not selling you something. I am handing you back something that was taken. I am pointing to a door that was quietly closed about 60 years ago and telling you it still opens if you push on it. The hinges are not rusted. Nothing has changed about the physics of silver ions or the chemistry of copper oxidation. The metals do not know there is an industry that prefers you do not use them. They just do what they have always done, which is make water safer to drink. One last thing before I let you go. If you try this, and I hope you do, give it time, fill your jar at night, let it sit covered on the counter for a minimum of 6 hours, preferably 8 to 12. You will notice the water tastes slightly different. Some people describe it as softer, cleaner, almost sweeter. That is not your imagination. That is the absence of the bacterial byproducts that normally give tap water its faint off taste. Once you notice the taste, you will not want to go back.